Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
We did not engage in conflict that was out of line with our mission.
Is it disloyalty? Is it treason to oppose the hands of tyranny? Never!
I will never send troops anywhere on a mission of that kind without telling them that if somebody shoots at them, they can darn well shoot back.
I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty! Oh, give me death!
A dark cloud is finally lifting across the world as U.S. military intelligence and their global partners are destroying the deep state criminal power structure that has ruled over our planet for hundreds of years.
We are free with the God-given right, and we shall not give that right to any power on earth.
Hi, I'm Scott McKay. The world is at, and I am your host on The Tipping Point on Revolution Radio, where every Monday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, we bring you the latest in this ensuing takedown of this global criminal empire.
That's an image of strength.
You'll get the raw, hard truth here on The Tipping Point. So come join us Mondays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern in Studio B at revolution.radio.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs, government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning! We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all!
See how the trouble you've started?
Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio.
Here we go, hour 1. Get ready. And greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the past meets the future. In here, the results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination. Have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us. This is coming to you live, America Free Radio, to our friends at Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported network in America, possibly in the world. We're also streaming to you live on several video platforms, Rockfin and Rumble and Facebook and Twitch and DLive and Twitter and Foxhole and YouTube with archives saved on Odyssey. So we are virtually everywhere where live podcasting is available and free. So share it with your friends. That's how we grow. That's how we grow. Chat room is alive and well, and you can see lots of people in there already. My good friend Old Dog is there, Intrepid Explorer. We have been to several conferences together, and we'll do some more. Great traveling companion, I will tell you. Deborah is there. Let's see. Mojo Palms is there. Monterey 23. Dragons Life Gaming. That's interesting. I like that. V Reed 954. Carib 67's back. Restaman 59. Wow. We got East Coast, West Coast, Canada. Decker 1420, good to have you out there. Shauna May, good to see you in the chat room. She's one of my Facebook friends, communicates with me often on my Facebook page, at Brooks Agnew, easy to find. So follow me on Facebook. I post stuff there throughout the day. Whenever I get a break sitting in the office, I'll put something up there. Most interesting thing that happened to me today, I would openly laugh about it if it wasn't so irritating to me. I today normally get my Social Security check because it's the 27th, and I didn't get it. So I went to my Social Security. You can go online and kind of check that stuff out. And it says, oops, they overpaid me. Yeah, they overpaid me a lot. So I called him on the phone, and gosh, I can't believe it. I got a human being on the phone in less than 12 minutes. It was pretty amazing. Usually you're on the phone for an hour before you get anybody into government. But there happened to be somebody there. We discussed it, and it turns out that I didn't wait till I was 66 and 2 months. I retired at 65 in a couple months or whatever. And it turns out I made just a little bit too much money between January and July, which would have been my 66 and 2 months in July. Because I was born in May, because I'm a Gemini, just like a lot of you out there are, and all my kids, of course. So they took it all out at once. So I don't get a check this month. It didn't look like I was going to get a check for 9 months. That's a lot. So I called them up and said, hey, what can we do about this? And they said, oh, well, we'll set you up on easy monthly payments for 36 months. So next month I get a check, but it's going to be light, several $100s for the next 3 years while I pay off the overpayment. Whatever. I mean, it's insane what this administration has done to the retired. It's just a shame, absolute shame what's going on. It's going to get worse too. Don't worry, your time is coming. It's going to be 77 in 2 months, 78 or 67 in 2 months, 68 in 2 months. You watch. You won't be able to draw a check until you're 70 years old. Why? Because they spent all your money. They sent it all to Ukraine. How about that? Yeah. Pretty interesting. Is that Papa Susie? Should I read that on the air? Let me read it first. Give me a second. Yes. We do enjoy every day. Absolutely. I mean, whether we're doing our own thing, which everybody should be doing. Old Dog is a great traveling companion. It's kind of nice, to have somebody bigger than me. That's kind of rare. Bigger than me, because I could just walk into a room and say, yeah, this is Old Dog. He's my bodyguard. Everybody just kind of, okay, yes, sir, right this way, Mr. Agnew. No problem. Would you like the foam blown off of that for you, Mr. Agnew? See, that's the kind of treatment you get. Old Dog is an imposing figure until he smiles. then everybody in the room just warms right up. Great to have around. Great to have around. All right, I want to talk a little bit about the armed American. There was a poll that was conducted by the University of Chicago's Institute of Politics, and I thought it was an interesting poll. I like the questions sometimes that they ask and the way that they ask them and who it is that they seek answers from, and that can often influence the statistics. I do statistics for a living, so I'm always attuned to bad statistics, sort of like, 4 out of 5 dentists, or sort of like the American Beef Council says, don't eat too much bread. Or the American Bread Council says, don't eat too much beef. It's bad statistics. But this one was interesting because it found that nearly 1/3 of American voters, and they polled quite a few, about 1,000, which is a good sampling. They polled 1,000 voters, and 1/3 of them believed that they may have to take up arms against the U.S. government. Yeah, and these are like Americans inside America. Yeah, and so it was 1,000 registered voters. It was conducted over 4 days from May 19th to May 23rd. And the margin of error is, well, it's kind of high, plus or minus 3.5 percentage points, which is, that's a broad swing, 7%. But still, 1/3, that's significant. That's not like 10%. That's like 33%. So Republican pollster Neil Newhouse and Democrat pollster Joel Benenson, with input from students at the Institute of Politics, conducted this survey. And on July 24th, which was a few days ago, The Hill reported the pollsters found that 28% of all voters, including 37% of gun owners, agreed it may be necessary at some point soon for citizens to take up arms against the government. Now, I have to use caution here because I don't know exactly how the question was asked. They only quote part of the question. I think if the question were, if the U.S. government were to come against you in some fashion, like against your town or whatever, we're going to confiscate all your weapons, would you take up arms against them? If the government, not the army, but the government were to, say, order the police to canvass a neighborhood and find all the registered guns to make sure that they are at the home that they're supposed to be at, and make sure that you present the gun, that they match the serial number with what they have on the records, would you resist that? I mean, these are the kinds of questions to go. And you have to understand that gun registration is not in the possession of the government. No, the gun registration is in the possession of the FFL, the Federal Firearms License Holder. That's the guy that has the yellow sheet, okay? So if the government were to come to the FFL, and most of the ones I know, and I know a few of them, and they were to say, we want all your yellow sheets, we're going to go match up all these records, guess who's going to have a fire? That's right. They're going to have a fire, and those records are going to be, it's going to be really, really hard to find out who is buying weapons, especially when you have a permit to buy that weapon. Like, to get a permit to buy a weapon here in North Carolina, you can buy up to, I think it is up to five pistols. And I think it's 1 to 5. So you pay per permit, but I think you can get a permit to buy 5. And this is if you don't have a concealed carry. And you have to go to the sheriff's department, and they will issue you the permit, and then you can take the permit to the gun store, and you can buy whatever gun you want. But the sheriff doesn't get a copy of that yellow sheet. He does not. The FFL holds those records. That's the way it's done. So if you were to say, use your maximum and go in and say, okay, I want to buy 5 handguns. I don't want to buy them right now, all at once. You normally would say, okay, that would send up some kind of flag, right? We would send a notice to the sheriff, hey, this guy came in and bought 5 firearms at one time. That ain't cheap. That ain't cheap. I mean, if you're buying a new firearm, you're talking $300, $400, $500, $600, $700. That's 3 or 4 large you're going to lay down between the ammo and the gun and the holster and all that. You're going to lay down some cash. But I still don't think the state is notified. I think the state is only notified in the case of a crime. Then the serial number is matched up with the FFL and it's traced to the owner. Now, if you have a concealed carry, that puts you in a different category altogether. You can buy as many firearms as you want and you don't need a permit. Why do you think that is? Well, I'll answer the question for you because I don't have time to see it scroll up on the chat room. But here's the thing. Concealed carry owners or concealed carry applicants in the state of North Carolina, you have to go to the sheriff's office and you got to sit down face to face and he interviews you or the deputy interviews you. And they'll ask you the standard questions and the answers aren't all that important. It's how you answer the questions that's important. There's a lot of discretion given to the deputy and given to the sheriff as to whether or not you get that permission to get the concealed carry. And there's some things you have to do, too. You have to complete a class from an accredited instructor, and you have to pass the class, and you have to bring that form back to the sheriff's department, and then they will issue the permit, and it comes out, I don't know, sometimes a month later. They get behind sometimes. And that is good for 5 years. And then in 5 years, guess what you have to do? You got to go back to the sheriff's department and renew it because things happen. And the sheriff is going to check your record, see if you've had a DUI, see if you've had a domestic altercation, see if you've, had to use your weapon in any way that has been recorded by law enforcement. That could greatly influence whether you get that weapon. Here's the bottom line. The bottom line is the concealed carry owner or the person that is permitted to conceal carry is the cream of the crop. These are basically civilian deputies. Okay? You're old enough, you're financially responsible enough. Why? Because you haven't filed bankruptcy, you haven't been recently divorced, you're one of the stable members of the community. That's why you're allowed to buy the weapons. The red flags are very small. They take care of the red flags way ahead of when the red flags actually happen. And guess how many concealed carry people are involved in gun crime or robberies of any kind? Exactly. Because you know who commits crimes? Bad people. Bad people commit crimes. And they're the same people over and over again. So I put all that in context when this poll comes out. And they say that 1/3 of the citizens believe it may be necessary at some point soon for citizens to take up arms against the government. I don't think that means offensively. I don't think it means we're going to get in ranks and columns and march to the state capitol or march to the U.S. Capitol and use our arms against the government. That would be an insurrection, and in that case, the governor could call out the National Guard, and if that wasn't enough, yes, posse comitatus does not apply when it comes to armed insurrection. The actual army can be used against enemies of the nation inside the nation. Posse comitatus only applies to police work. Police cannot call the regular army to come in and help them solve an issue. The National Guard, yes, that's a different thing. But the actual regular federal troops are not to be used inside the United States unless they're fighting an enemy. Unless they're fighting an enemy of the United States. And by the way, that could be a domestic enemy too. Anyway, the poll shows 1 And every 5 Democrat voters believe they may have to take up arms as well. Of course, when they're broken down by party, 33% of Republican voters, 35% of independent voters, and about 20% of Democrat voters believe that they may have to take up arms. Now, the poll shows that nearly half of American voters, that's about 49%. This is a significant number in any kind of statistic that you draw or that you study. 49% is like way outside the margin of error. They agree with the statement that they, and this is the part in quotes, but it's small letters, so it's not the whole sentence, but this is what it says, that they more and more feel like a stranger in my own country, close quote. Can I see a show of hands in the chat room? How many people feel like a stranger in your own country? When's the last time you flew at an airport? I feel like a stranger. I'm old enough. I remember being able to walk from my car straight up to the gate and get on the airplane. Yeah. And my family could see me off right there, right at the door. Bye-bye now. See you later. And right when you got off the plane, right there. They didn't have to have a ticket. They could be in the gate. Not anymore. You want to feel like a stranger in your own country? Well, fly. A majority of American voters agree with the statement claiming the United States government is corrupt and rigged against everyday people like me. While this view was most prominent among Republicans and self-identified conservatives, even 51% of voters who call themselves very liberal also agreed. That's a serious position. When you feel like a stranger in your own country and you feel like the government is rigged against you. I mean, I did today when I was supposed to get my Social Security check and I didn't get it. And then I called up and you know what they said? Oh, well, you could appeal it. If you think we are, of course, they give me no notice or anything like that. They're supposed to give you a notice. Hey, you have an overpayment here. We're going to take this out in 2 months or whatever. No, they just did it. I didn't find out till the day of the check. And then I had to call and find out. She said, well, that's kind of improper. I felt like it was rigged against me because I told her, oh, yeah, I'm going to appeal against the Social Security office. And you know how far that's going to go? It's going to go nowhere. And you know what it's going to do? It's going to piss them off against me. And they're going to put some kind of suffix on my Social Security number. They're going to watch me till I die. No, I'm not going to appeal it. Let's just set it up on payments. I want to disappear back into ignominy and collect my check, the one I put all the money in. And she said, well, that's not really accurate. That's not really a bank account, she said. I almost, believe me, I had my radio voice on anyway, but I said, well, look, you're not old enough to draw Social Security, but they take it out of your check every single day that you work. And I've been working since I was 14 years old. That's a long time. I put a lot of money in there, and I intend to get it all out. You're not taking anything to the grave with you. Yeah. It's a savings account. I don't care what they say. I put the money in. I'm getting the money out. Yeah, that's exactly right. What is that? Is that First Sergeant 1984? I can't make that out. Anyway, it says it's not a bank account, it's theft. Yeah, it basically is. Here's the way it's supposed to work. Working people put in a certain amount of their money, their check, 13.5% or whatever it is, and people that are retired live on that money. And then when it's your turn to retire, the working people, they put in the money and support you. And so it's kind of like paying it forward. Well, it was a brilliant plan when it was thought of. And the trouble is, it was so brilliant, it was so good that the people that were receiving benefits from it weren't taking enough money out of the system, and so it began to build wealth. Oh, yeah. It began to build like billions of dollars in there. And you know what Congress did? They looked at that and they said, what the hell? All this money's in there. These people don't need that. We need that. So they stole it. They just took it. And then they took some more. And then they took some more. And that's why we're in the predicament that we are. You know, I had no problem with today's working people that have Social Security being taken out of their check, paying my Social Security check. I had no problem with that because I did it when I was young, and they do it when they're young, and that's the way it goes. The problem is that when I was young, there were way more workers than there were retired people, and that was for two reasons. One, baby boomers were much better looking than Generation Xers or Generation Z, much better looking, and there were a lot more babies. They called it a baby boom for a reason, because the women were so hot. Anyway, the problem is today, and the Generation Z and X, the women are not there. I mean, the men are femmy, and what's happened is the birth rate has gone down, and we don't have as many workers. And the second thing that happened, well, maybe the third thing that happened is old people began really getting old. When I retired from the military, I didn't retire from the military. I quit early. I mean, I served my time, but I got out without making it a career. Normally what would happen is people would serve 20 years and they would get half their base pay for the rest of their lives. If they served 30 years, which would have meant they would have been like 48 years old, like that's nothing. They get out at 48 years old, they get 75% of their base pay for life. Well, you think to yourself, how can the military afford to do this? Well, the simple answer is the average life expectancy of a lifer, that's someone that spent their career in the military, was 55. They only had to pay 7 years. They were gone. Right on to the next one. They put all that promise in their pocket. But then what happened is smart guys were not drinking and smoking and putting themselves in harm's way, and they finished their 30-year career at 48 years old, and they went on the private sector, and they worked another 20 years in another job while they were drawing their pensions. And so they got two pensions and Social Security. And I knew several people like this. And when they retired at 68, 69 years old, they're knocking down about $4,200 a month for the rest of their lives. And guess what? They live to be 100 years old. So that's like 22 to 25 years these people are living, drawing that kind of income every single month. Well, it's serious money, and there aren't enough working people to cover it. That's why, like the city of Bakersfield and Chicago, and that's why all these places are upside down, because people are living. They're living well into their 90s. I mean, I'm 67, and when my parents were my age, when my grandparents were my age, they were freaking old. They were wobbling side to side, driving 30 miles an hour, old. They were old. I'm not. And that's the difference between today's 67-year-old. 65 is the new 40, right? It just is. Believe me, you want to go clubbing with me? I'll show you what I'm talking about. They're out there having fun and rocking. I looked the other day at the concerts that are coming tonight. Doobie Brothers came 2 nights ago. That's like, when I was in high school, Doobie Brothers. They're still touring. And you know who filled up the audience? It wasn't young people. It was people like me. Whoa, listen to the music. See, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, what is that old dog? Double Dipper Buddy is taking in 2 pensions plus Social Security equals about $9,500 a month. Very nice. See, that takes all the pressure off. If you're debt-free, that wolf is so far away from the door you can't even hear it howl. It's a nice life. Set it up that way. Take your time. Take some shit. Show up to work on time every day. See what I'm saying? What is that, Susan Groves? My grandmother lived to 95. Figure I'll make it to 110 to 120. You bet you will. You bet you will. When I had my 60th birthday, I told my kids, well, I'm a third of the way done. Yeah, I am a third of the way done. I'm in that good of shape, in that good of health. And I work out often. If you don't believe me, follow my Facebook page and you'll see. What is that, July, baby? Too late. Too late. Okay, well, whatever. You're never too late. Never too late. Turn that diet around and start working out again, and you'll see. You'll see all those good parts start coming back. All right. When we wrote the Arc of Millions of Years series, my late author, E.J. Clark, who's a wonderful person, who traveled several countries with her, and we took a lot of photographs, and we wrote 2,000 pages together, and just a wonderful, wonderful experience. We had the question that everyone else has: what happened to the Maya? Okay, this grand society with these huge cities with not a small amount of planning, pyramids and highways and water systems and irrigation, and what happened to these brilliant people, these brilliant, industrious, and peaceful people? Well, researchers have peered back through 800 years of history to conclude that the Mayapan, that's the capital of culture and politics for the Maya people of the Yucatan Peninsula in the 13th and 14th century, may well have been undone by drought. Yeah. And it happens, if you live in a society that is dependent upon the weather year to year to year, and you have done that for hundreds of years, let's say 500 years, which is a long time, way longer than the U.S. has been around, and the rain's always been there and the soil's always been good to you, why would you build reservoirs? Why would you store water? Because water just falls out of the sky, right? You do the right dance, you sing the right song, you live the right life, and rain falls out of the sky. Well, that drought would have led to civil conflict, over food and drinking water, which would in turn have brought about political collapse, according to the researchers. It's logical, but they don't really have any proof of that. And they have some proof, but I'll show you what I mean. People would then have retreated to smaller and smaller and safer settlements, because a smaller group of people can be more self-sustaining than a very large group of people that has, a more complex socio-political structure. You have musicians, and you have politicians, and you have artists, and you have freeloaders, people that don't do anything, but they still consume, right? They still eat food and drink water and make sewage. You know what I'm talking about. They're in your town too. But in small towns, that's kind of a very small percentage of the people. People are normally, unless they have some kind of mental or health handicap, they are normally productive, even if they, work, at the local barber shop or the local gas station. As well as giving us a useful insight into the history of this ancient people, the new study is a warning as well about how shifts in climate can quickly put pressures on even the most well-established and prosperous citizens. That's why we plan. It's why we make the region from which we draw our resources, the ocean or the mountains, or what, we make it much larger than just the community. We don't just put our cup out and say, okay, I'm ready for a glass of water now, it can rain. That's pretty much hand to mouth, right? Anyway, multiple data sources indicate that civil conflict increased significantly, and generalized linear modeling correlates strife in the city with drought conditions being between 1450, while researchers in their published paper. They go on to say, we argue that prolonged drought escalated rival factional tensions, but subsequent adaptations reveal region-scale resiliency, ensuring that Maya political and economic structures endured until European contact in the early 16th century. It was still quite glorious at the time that Cortez and his people arrived. The team already had a lot of historical records to work with covering population change and contemporary diets and climate conditions. These records, and by the way, Teotihuacan was estimated to be a city of 200,000 people. Been there. It's big enough. Now, the city center certainly could accommodate that many people, even at one time, one big, Earth, Moon, Sun celebration time. But one of the things you notice when you climb the Temple of the Moon, it's the smaller of the temples, or of the pyramids. And by the way, they're made with like concrete, and they're small rocks and concrete. They're poured buildings. They're not stacked stone. One of the things that you notice when you get up there, and it's kind of hard to get up there because, first of all, it's high altitude, and second of all, the steps are about 24 inches. They're not like 8-inch steps, which you could just walk right up. You have to climb this thing. But you get to the top and let your heart rate settle down a little bit, and then take a gaze around. And one thing you'll notice, as far as the eye can see, there are other little mounds. There are other little, hills. And I'd say about the size of a house, covered with dirt. And probably that's what they are. So you wonder to yourself, why hasn't the local government uncovered this stuff? Why isn't the true stature of this city uncovered? Why isn't it excavated? Well, it's all about money. And the weather that they have down there is, it's inclement for people that live in the United States, because it's hot, it's humid, it's high altitude. And the dust blows around quite a bit because there isn't, like grass making everything behave itself. It's probably why it isn't all excavated, because if it was, then they'd have to maintain it, and they'd have to hire people to do it. It would be a drain, and they don't have it set up to make revenue off of it, and so it doesn't get done. But it's a big city. And it is said that the Maya that lived in that city in Teotihuacan, they didn't build it. That these pyramids, even though they were made with mortar, they were covered in a white limestone, or a white kind of mortar that made them brilliant in the sun. And it's said that when the drought, or when the weather drove them west from the coast to that area, they came over the mountain and down into the valley, and here was this gorgeous city with this 1,000-foot long main street that's probably 300 feet wide. Maybe 300 feet wide and maybe a quarter of a mile long. It's way longer than 1,000 feet. And all these structures and all the irrigation, stone work done so that water could flow into pools and be able to take sewage out of the city and out to sea. It was all there for them. They didn't build it. They inherited it. And so the Maya have the previous builders of that city to thank for that city. And we don't even know how far back that goes. It goes back a long, long way. The lack of water would have affected agricultural practices, trade routes. It would put a strain on the people of the Mayapan, the study suggests. As food got more scarce and the situation got more dangerous, people either died or they dispersed, and they did not have a tremendous lifespan either. In the final mass grave dug before the city was abandoned, the researchers report that many of the remains probably belonged to the family members of the Kokams, the heads of state, a bloody end brought on by competing factions and social unrest. Makes sense to you, doesn't it? Our findings support Mayapan's storied institutional collapse between 1441 and 1461, a consequence of civil conflict driven by political rivalry and ambition, which was embedded in the social memory of the Yucatan peoples, whose testimonies entered written record of the early colonial period. Human responses to environmental pressures such as drought are clearly complex. They vary by region, by era, of course. There's so many factors to weigh up and balance when it comes to considering why a historical population acted in the way that it did without leaving a written record. The movement of the people to other parts of the Yucatan Peninsula, including prosperous coastal towns and politically independent settlements, helped the Maya culture continue to thrive after the fall of Mayapan. And there was little evidence of any conflict between these regions before Spanish rule started. That's testament to a resilient system of human environmental adaptations, obviously. Archaeological and historical records are well suited for examining past societal effects of climate crisis over long-term cycles, and the Maya region offers the breadth and depth of archaeological, historical, and climate records essential for studying correlations between social change and fluctuating climate conditions. And that's the key, is the fluctuating climate conditions. If you go to Tula, if you go to Teotihuacan, not so much Chichen Itza, that's a little more jungly there, but the first two areas that I mentioned are kind of high deserty. They're dry and dusty, and they kind of remind me of Southern California around the Northridge area, where, you got eucalyptus trees, but you don't have rivers of water. I think there was at one time, but there isn't now. So what Southern Californians have to do is they have to tap into the Colorado River, which they did. The Hoover Dam and other dam structures, and they gathered the melt of the Sierra Nevadas. They stored it, they saved it, and they routed it, through the agricultural lands to Vegas and on to the cities. Now, I think we've had plenty of snow, because there was snow on the mountains when we went 2 weeks ago. There was snow on the mountains. The issue is that the runoff is being mismanaged. The question is why? Why? For instance, my lab partner was taking me from the lab back to the hotel. I killed two birds with one stone when I was out there filming for The Unexplained with William Shatner. And I decided to stop by the lab and spent the day there. And so he drove me back to the hotel. And one of the route that he drove me took us over the LA River. Now, I don't know if you know what the LA River is. If you're from there, you do. But it is a wash. It's a concrete river that is built right through the city, and it goes to the ocean. And lots of movies have been made about that wash. They've been shot down in there. Motorhomes and cars and drag races. And hell, we drove our cars down there when we were kids. Point is, there's never any water in the wash unless it's raining, which when it rains in Southern California, it's kind of the rainy season. It doesn't rain every day, but when it rains, it'll rain for a week at a time. And when that happens, being that it's the LA basin, the storm drains all lead to the LA River. So the runoff from the rain from all the houses, and I mean, it's basically concrete from the Santa Monica, or from the, it is from the San Gabriel Mountains, but that's not how far away the water comes. But from San Bernardino mountains all the way to the sea, it's pretty flat. So the water doesn't have anywhere to go. So they made the LA River to take that runoff. But the only time it has water in it, Earth Explorers, is when it rains, except for 2 weeks ago when my lab partner drove me back to the hotel. There was water in the wash. There was water in the LA River. And I said, hey, what's that? He said, what's what? I said, what's water doing in the LA River? I thought you guys were in the middle of a drought. He never paid any attention to it. Here was millions of gallons of fresh water going right out to sea. It goes right down to the beach and right out to the ocean. My question is, where's that water coming from? Where's the water coming from? It's coming from the reservoirs. It's not coming from rain. It's not coming from runoff. They're draining the reservoirs. Why? See, that's the mismanagement I'm talking about. So when I look at aerial photographs, and we used to go to Lake Mead, we would go to Salton Sea. These were full pool then. There were sailboats and drag races and all kind of stuff on Lake Mead. Was a big deal. It was a big lake. It was like an inland freshwater ocean. It was unbelievable how big it was. It was enormous. Now it's a puddle. It's a puddle. And my question is, where's the water? Why didn't they catch the melt off from these record snows that they've had the last dozen years? Why didn't they catch that water in Lake Mead and store it there? It's like a 1 billion gallon lake. It's unbelievable how big this thing is. It's enormous. You can see it from space. They drained it. They let the water go out to sea. They mismanaged it. Why? Same thing that happened to the Maya is happening in Los Angeles. The same kind of stress that was put on the Mayapan, who, by the way, didn't have a way to store water. They didn't build dams. They didn't know anything about, building a reservoir and storing water. They just thought it would always come, and it didn't. And when it didn't for 20 years, they left. Simple as that. That's not that hard. And of course, they killed all their politicians on the way out and threw them in a big mass grave. It's your fault. It hasn't rained for 20 years, and it's your fault. Your bad policies. Whatever. Susan makes a good point. No money in it. I would think there would be. I mean, if you stored the water, that's revenue, right? I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you, Susan. I'm just saying, why wouldn't you want to have everybody living in those $1 to $5 million homes have plenty of water to wash their Lamborghini with? It makes everybody happy. You're not going to end up in a mass grave like the political leaders of the Maya. It's just an interesting quandary. All right, let's talk about why the FBI needs to be dissolved. I've been talking about this for, since I began writing Charm of Favor, which was in 2017. It was that book just streamed out of me, I just finished the Birth Trilogy, and people wanted me to write a sequel to the Birth Trilogy, and I just couldn't. It just had a great ending. The characters were so perfect, the way I could just see it in my mind. The whole TV series just played out for me as I wrote that trilogy. So I wrote a prequel, and the prequel is Charm of Favor, kind of, sort of. Not the same characters, but the same sort of forces at work. And as I was doing research for the book, I got my hands on a bunch of FBI reports. Not from the FBI, but reports about the FBI. And it infuriated me. Absolutely infuriated me how corrupt that organization was, how it was founded in corruption in 1935 by Roosevelt from the Bureau of Investigation, which was not federal. These were bad guys going after bad guys. These are bad guys, former bad guys, with no compunction about filling somebody full of .45 caliber holes with a badge, going after people who had no problem filling people full of bullet holes either. And it was just a war. It was just a war. And evidently they were badder than the bad, and they were pretty successful with some of these notorious bank robbers. And so Roosevelt decided to codify them and made them a federal force by making them the Federal Bureau of Investigation in 1935. And the charter was, you will protect the interests of the nation. What the hell does that mean? Well, nobody knows what it really means. But, in those days, we were always at war and Roosevelt was always president, right? So it meant protect the interests of the president. It meant protect the interests of the Democrat Party, which was fascist through and through. It was fascist through and through. And even Patton said we chose the wrong side. We shouldn't have fought on the side of the fascists against the communists. We should have fought on the side of the communists against the fascists. And that's pretty much, we fought on the side of the communists against the fascists, and what we should have done is fought on the side of the fascists against the communists. So he recognized we had a fascist government. And Truman was the most hated president we ever had. We didn't even do approval numbers in Truman's day because it would have been futile. He was that hated. He wasn't even elected. He was just ascended to the office because he survived Roosevelt, who died in office. So the FBI analyst accused of scuttling the investigation of Hunter Biden's global influence peddling operation. He was at the center of several major developments that advanced the Bureau's fraudulent Trump-Russia collusion probe. You all watched it unfold. I think everybody watched it unfold, and we really did not know. Well, no, we did know, but we refused to believe, maybe, the extent to which this corruption went. I didn't refuse because I was writing about it in the book, and the FBI is totally corrupt. Excuse me. My advice is that you take the FBI and you dissolve it. It doesn't exist anymore. And then you reform out of the FBI, which is a huge conglomerate of murderers and financial criminals and political criminals and thugs. You divide it up into 4 smaller agencies, and you move them around. Like, you have regional offices of the FBI in every single state, but you can make regional state offices, like one in Indianapolis and one in Atlanta and one in Chicago and like that. And each one has an area of specificity. So you don't end up spending more money investigating and tracking and cataloging parents who are raising hell at school board meetings than you do following human trafficking and the distribution of fentanyl in our neighborhoods. That's just wrong. You know it's wrong, and what I'm telling you is absolutely factual information. They're spending way more money tracking what they call domestic terrorists, who are just parents standing up at school board meetings saying, "You're teaching my kid what?" Than they are spending money tracking drug cartel and human trafficking individuals inside our country. I swear to God, it's real. So you break this up and you give each one specificity, and this way, Congress, which is really us in Washington, it should be us in Washington, Congress then can look at the budget of these separate organizations and say, you shall not, absolutely shall not rob from Peter to pay Paul, which is what they do right now. So Brian Auten was named in a letter 2 days ago by Senator Grassley from Iowa. And the letter was to Attorney General Merrick Garland, who has been very quiet of late. I have not heard a fart out of this old guy. And the FBI Director, Christopher Wray, who I think is kind of a babyface criminal. I think he does a good job in front of the mic. You bring him before the committee, and by the time you're done, you go, well, that guy's not so bad, is he? I mean, he got a rough job, but he's doing the best he can. That's the way you come away from it. Until you shake yourself off and go, holy crap, look at this. And then you start seeing what Christopher Wray's really doing, and you go, man, he got me again. He fooled me again. But they were informing them that the Bureau's whistleblowers, these are people inside the agency that are seeing this shit go on, and they're saying somebody needs to hear about this. So they slip it to Grassley, who has a lot of clout and a lot of power, and he's sharp as a tack still, even at his age, and his integrity is absolutely, irrefutable, unimpeachable. And they charged the analyst was part of a scheme to undermine derogatory information connected to Hunter Biden by falsely suggesting it was disinformation. When did we discover Hunter Biden's laptop? Well, I think President Trump was still president. Yeah, and I think if the people had heard about Hunter Biden's laptop and maybe seen a few choice pictures and watched a few choice videos, we would not have to be worrying about no Uncle Joe being in the White House, because he would not have gotten elected. You see, that's where the FBI gets involved. That's why they need to be dissolved, if for no other reason. Hiding evidence. You don't believe me? All right, let me throw a few more things out there. How about Huma Abedin's laptop? How about Debbie Wasserman Schultz's laptop? How about the Awan brothers? You remember those guys that were setting up all the internet and cell phones and PDAs and everything for Congress? Those Pakistanis that were involved. How about those guys? You see, all this evidence, all this information, all this corruption. And let's not even talk about Ghislaine Maxwell's black book. No prosecutions. Understand? Nobody's going to jail. No grand juries, nothing. And that's because the FBI is grabbing up this evidence, and where people have copies of the evidence, they said, oh, well, that's just Russian disinformation. Come on, Gerald Nadlis did it from the House floor. I can't believe you brought Russian disinformation. It wasn't Russian disinformation. Talk about furious. Anyway, Otten. Oh, let's take a quick break. This is a 2-hour program, so we have a break in the middle, and then we'll come right back after this. Don't go away. More America Free Radio right after this.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
interested in the paranormal, murder mystery, real natural law? Do you enjoy interviews with amazing guests? Then join Crypt Rick every Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Revolution Radio. Studio A, freedomslips.com. Crypt Rick's Hyper Thinking. Welcome to the Crypt.
Join me at Revolution Radio, Studio B, at 11 a.m. on Saturday for Free Association, when we take a look at philosophy, spirituality, psychology, social issues, and geopolitics. It's every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Studio B at freedomslips.com.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Galactic Interstellar Council on Revolution Radio Studio A, Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us as we traverse the starseed paradigm, as expressed in the time-space continuum that we know as the divine expression of love and light. Integrating this conscious unity into the galactic paradigm. So welcome all, both terrestrial beings and galactic beings as one. So be it. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at higher risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
All right. Good to be back. So Brian Otten he was named in this letter by Senator Grassley to Attorney General Merrick Garland. And he's telling them that the Bureau whistleblowers charge the analyst was part of a scheme to undermine derogatory information. Now, based on the findings by the Justice Department Inspector General, this guy Brian Otten, failed to advise his colleagues of the unreliability of the Steele dossier, compilation of salacious claims made against Trump, later debunked by special counsel Robert Mueller's probe, which could not find evidence of Trump-Russia collusion. Now, Brian Otten had been told by Igor Dachenko, Steele's primary source, that the claims against Trump amounted to rumor and could not be verified. They were less than rumor. It was a story. It was a fictional story that they just inserted Trump's name into. And the story actually came from Hillary Clinton. So anyway, all this was downplayed. You were there, you lived through it, and already see it. So further, and this makes it even worse, as investigative reporter Paul Sperry reported in July 2 years ago, Brian was involved in the January 2017 investigation of then Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. He got Flynn as well. Unsealed evidence shows the FBI was prepared to drop the Flynn case for lack of evidence. But good old Peter Strzok, you know who he is, right? Peter Strzok, the way you pronounce his name. He pressed ahead, and he set up the infamous ambush interview at the White House. So a memo shows FBI agents plotted before the interview to get Flynn to lie so he could be fired. In addition, and by the way, it was Mike Pence that fired him, just so you know. In addition, Auten helped draft part of the prominent January 2017 intelligence community assessment on Russian interference, which you have to understand what went on here, because we're talking about January 2017, which was one of the final meetings of the Obama administration before they left. January 5th, 2017, is when Barack Obama pulled in his closest associates, his comrades, and they plotted to use the intelligence agencies against Trump. A, to try to keep him out of office, and B, after he got in office, to try to hobble him so badly he couldn't get anything done. That's the real insurrection. That's the real coup right there. Everybody that was in that January 5th meeting with Barack Obama needs to be tried and convicted for treason. And Auten is one of the guys. So a June 2021 article on Patrick Henry's website says that Auten was actually teaching a class on counterterrorism, falsely labeled as disinformation. In his letter Monday to Garland and Ray, Grassley wrote that whistleblowers alleged that in August 2020, Auten opened an assessment that was used by an FBI headquarters team to improperly discredit negative Hunter Biden information as disinformation and caused investigative activity to stop. That's why you didn't see anybody arrested. That's why, even though all these copies went out, all these emails and all these text messages, all these videos, all these documents that damned Joe Biden were never made public. They never were an influence in the 2020 election, because Auten is the guy that stopped all that evidence from reaching the public. Yeah, because the laptop was turned over to the FBI in 2019, and nothing on the laptop ever made it to the public. Nothing on the laptop ever made it to the Senate or to Congress. Even though copies were sent out, the FBI quashed it. So anyway, in March, that's the next month, the FBI Cyber Division Director, his name is Brian Vorndran. He was in a House hearing, and he didn't know the whereabouts of the laptop, which actually astonished, if you will recall, Representative Matt Gaetz. You remember he said, "What? What do you mean you don't know the whereabouts of the laptop? What the hell are you talking about? You don't know it. Isn't it in the evidence room?" And the FBI official ultimately promised he would take to FBI officials Gaetz' request that the Bureau provide someone who can come to a House briefing regarding where the laptop is. That's a typical way to buy time. Well, let me go see if I can find somebody that knows where that laptop is, and you could schedule another meeting and we'll come back. And you know what? Shortly before the November 2020 presidential election, 51 former national security officials signed a letter stating, without evidence, the contents of the Hunter Biden laptop had the hallmarks of a Russian influence operation. They had enough time to get to enough politicians, stuff enough money in the pockets, make enough threats that they got 51 of them to say, you know what, we don't even think that laptop exists. That laptop is Russian disinformation. None of that evidence can be used. I don't care whose picture's on it. Well, Grassley writes, whistleblowers allege that Aughton's assessment was opened in the very same month, August 2020, that Grassley and Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin received an unsolicited and unnecessary briefing from the FBI that purportedly related to the the Biden investigation. The contents of the briefing, the senator said, were later leaked to media to paint the investigation in a false light. Grassley noted that on July 13th, 2020, then Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, because the Republicans had the majority at that time, and of course Pelosi and Schiff, sent a letter with a classified attachment to the FBI to express a purported belief that Congress was the subject of a foreign disinformation campaign. That's how deep it goes, and that's how high it goes, and that's why they should all be tried and convicted for treason. Attorney General Garland and Director Wray, simply put, based on the allegations, they have systemic and existential problems with the agencies. You have an obligation to the country to take these allegations seriously, immediately investigate and take steps to institute fixes to these and other matters before you. Like that's actually going to happen. That's why when President Trump comes back, first order business is to dissolve the FBI. Get rid of them. Bulldoze the building to the ground and put up another building. Use it for some other purpose. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. It was founded in 1935. It's time for it to go. And then just ship off all the good agents to other areas of the country and try to keep the budgets under control. Get them out of Washington. All right. Lead story tonight, I'm talking about Walmart. I got an insider. I can't tell you. U.S. stocks fell yesterday. They rebounded a little bit today, but I think some of that was kind of needed someplace to put the money. But the reason that they fell is that Walmart cut its earnings forecast. And they're sending other retail shares lower and adding to concern that consumer spending might not be strong enough to keep the U.S. out of a recession. See, I think that's a red herring, to blame it on the consumers, to say, well, we just don't have people coming in our store like they were coming before. Actually, I don't think that's really true. Here's what I think is happening. You remember before Christmas, when everybody was going to Walmart trying to get the flat screen TVs and all the stuff that they were going to get at Walmart because they had all these government checks that they wanted to spend. You remember that? But do you remember where the stuff was? That's right. That's right. It was on boats off the West Coast. And you remember DeSantis had to step in and Abbott stepped in and said, look, why don't you bring that stuff through the Panama Canal? We'll take it, right here. You can take it in Louisiana. You can take it in Florida. We'll process it right away. Well, that's another 11 days and a whole lot of fuel. And you got to wait to get through there and blah, blah, blah. The point is, they were low on inventory. But guess where that stuff is now? Huh? It's all at Walmart. All that stuff that was on the water now arrived. And Walmart has to put it somewhere. Now, I don't know about your Walmart, but I'll bet you every Walmart and every Walmart distribution center is busting at the seams with inventory. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And what month is it now? Well, it's July, almost August, right? It's almost August. And what do these stores do in July and August? They start buying their Christmas stuff, right? It's already being made. It's already being loaded up. The reason that the stock went down, the reason is because they have excess inventory. Now you think to yourself, oh, wonderful, Walmart's going to have a big sale and they're going to dump all this inventory. Well, it hasn't happened yet. Has not happened yet. You haven't seen those low prices really get cut low yet, have you? But you mark my words, it's going to. The issue is that they paid a certain amount of money for that stuff. And it's all about cash flow, no matter how big your organization is. And that's why when that number's off a little bit with Walmart, that's a big deal. Not so much for the seasoned people that have been working there a long time, but for the new employees, last one hired, first one fired kind of thing. So I don't think we're going to be able to pull out of this recession because you know what happens, what causes a recession. What causes a recession is, of course, you have runaway inflation, which we have, right? And that is because why? Everybody knows the answer to this question? Yes, exactly. Because government printed money. Because government printed money. That's where inflation comes from. That's the only place it can come from. You can't make inflation. He can't make inflation. They can't make inflation. Only government printing money can make inflation, and that's why we have the inflation. Because Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals printed money because they needed to. They needed to write people checks, and they just printed the money to do it. The recession occurs when you have 2 quarters in a row of negative growth. And you think to yourself, well, we couldn't go forever, right? Like Trump wanted us to do 5-6% per year. Could we? Could we? Well, we did during the 50s. We did during the 20s. We're getting ready to start the 20s again. I don't know, Earth Explorers. I could have stood a decade or so of 5% growth. Couldn't you? Couldn't you? I mean, not necessarily 5% growth in population. No, we weren't seeing that. 5% growth in wages, 5% growth in savings, 5% growth in buying power. Yeah, I could stand to see a little of that. Couldn't you? I would love to see over the next 10 years a 50% increase in my ability to buy. Hell yeah, it would be good for me. Well, we went from 5% plus to minus percent. Minus percent. That's what Virtual Joe did. He tanked our economy. Well, actually, it was the only way. No, he didn't blow it. He didn't blow it. He did exactly what he was tasked to do, and that was to destroy the Trump economy. Why? Because the Trump economy was building up the middle class. And where does the middle class shop? Walmart. Come on. People that want to get out of the middle class into the more well-to-do, they have to save money to get there, so they shop at Walmart. I'm just telling you, this is the store that is a good economic indicator of what's really going on in our economy. Walmart cut its quarterly and full-year profit estimates because, they said, of rising food inflation. That's not true. Yeah, the super Walmarts sell food, but that's not the primary source of inflation. No. This alarmed investors. They deliberated the implications for other retail stocks. The big box retailer said higher prices are spurring consumers to, and this is a very important statement, so true, I'm seeing it, spurring consumers to pull back on general merchandise spending, particularly in clothing, furniture, decorating, interior decorating stuff. That's where they're pulling back. That's where they're pulling back. It's not a little bit. It's a lot. Walmart went down 7.6%. 7.6%. That's nail biting time. That shows that the middle class is stopping. They're saying, whoa, I'm slowing down on my spending habits here. I'm still making the same amount, but I'm going to spend less. I'm going to pay off some of these credit cards. No. Charge up those credit cards. Keep buying. That's what they want you to do. And it dragged other retailers with it. Kohl's, Target, they also dropped. Kohl's dropped 9.1%. Target dropped 3.6%. And among apparel companies, you got Macy's, you got Nordstrom, you got Ross. Let's see. Macy went down 7.2%. Nordstrom went down 5%. And Ross went down 5%. And TJX companies went down 4.2%. This is a major indicator, okay? This is a type and a shadow of what is happening. The most important thing from the Walmart announcement is how inflation is changing what people buy. They're still making the same amount of money, but they're changing what they're buying. Food now makes up a bigger share of individuals' budgets because they got to eat. And that means that the other things, like clothing, get sacrificed. The retail turmoil bled into e-commerce stocks as well. Well. How about Amazon? How about eBay? How about Craigslist? Even Shopify tumbled 14.1% after the payments provider announced it's laying off 10% of its global workforce. That's a big layoff, 10%. Citing a pullback in online spending, saying it misjudged how long the pandemic-fueled e-commerce boom would last. Let me retranslate that. They misjudged how long the free money giveaway of Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals would last. The company will report its earnings. They reported them today. I don't have that number, but it's low. Amazon fell a whopping 5.2%. Square, which is a parent block with PayPal, both of which operate major merchant service businesses, they dropped 7.1% and 5.7% respectively. And by the way, PayPal took a 30% hit last October. Yeah, a third of their value evaporated. You know why? Because they stole the money from millions of shareholders. Just took it. And they said, you know what? You're never doing business with us again. Thank you for the money. We'll see you in 6 months if there's anything left. Yeah, millions of shareholders they did this to. And under whose advice? 19-year-olds inside of PayPal. They said, oh, these people are selling, F Joe Biden hats. Off with their heads. These people are selling, Trump flags. Nope, off with their heads. If you were politically incorrect, PayPal stole your money. Go ahead, sue me. They stole your money. They just said, thank you very much for the money. We'll see you in 6 months if there's anything left. Nope, I'm telling the truth. It was millions of accounts. And most of those accounts had $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. And I talked to one guy who ran a company that sold Trump T-shirts and all kinds of MAGA gear. PayPal burned him for $65,000. They just stole the money. Just took it. Yeah, this is big time serious shit. Where are the class action lawsuits? Well, I imagine the attorneys and attorneys are getting together and they're going after PayPal. You're not hearing about it in the news yet, but their revenue dropped. Their stock dropped 30% in October, and turns out this week, dropped another 5.7%. Not good. PayPal at one time was the largest deposit bank in the world. Yeah, it was the way people did business. It wasn't just the way people bought. It was also the way people sold. I was with them for 21 years. 21 years of honorable business. And one day they just stole the $3,000 and said, "We'll see you in 6 months if there's any money left." By the way, it's been 9 months. Almost. No, it has been 9 months since that happened. I haven't heard a word from them. Thousands and thousands of dollars. Gone. I will never see it again. Shares of McDonald's added nearly 2.7% following mixed second quarter results. That means that even fast food is being cut back on. Let's see. Traders are also bracing for an onslaught of mega cap tech earnings and economic data this week, as well as the outcome of the Federal Reserve meeting will help Wall Street direct its expectations for the rest of the year. Here's what I'm going to suggest for you, Earth Explorers. Now, I know this is a little bit of a hassle. I do this every year. I usually do it in January. I delayed it a little bit this year because I was really, really busy. But once a year, you should get another debit card. And I mean destroy the old one. Just say, I'm ending this one. I want another one. And, of course, what's going to happen in a few hours to a few days, you're going to start getting emails, hey, you need to update your billing information. And it'll come from like Netflix, and it'll come from Amazon, and it'll come from all these different companies. At that point, at that moment is when you make the assessment. Yeah, you know what? I don't think I need this anymore. I don't think I need Hulu anymore. I don't need Disney anymore. I don't need this. I don't need that. You'll find you'll save hundreds of dollars per month. Not only that, but all those little things that you don't even pay attention to, $2 here, $3 there, it doesn't mean much to you, but do it to 100,000 people at a time, and you're making about $250,000 a month for nothing. You're doing nothing. You're doing nothing, and you have all this money coming in. Because, why? Because it's just automatic on people's debit cards. Change your debit cards once a year. It'll take you a week to 10 days to get the card. Once you get the new number, and you can go back through those accounts and say, okay, I want to keep this one, this, and this, and this, and just let all the other ones go. You will save so much money you cannot believe. And not only that, that debit card number isn't going to be sold on the dark web for a long time. Your old number will be, but it doesn't work anymore, and it'll take a while for them to figure it out. I'm just telling you, if you don't go online and look at every single charge you're paying, from 50 cents on up, you're being ripped off. And that's what I'm recommending that you do. Now, if everybody listening to this tonight does this, is it going to make their stock prices change? Maybe not, but it's going to save you a lot of money, and that's what I'm here to do. So yesterday, the Federal Reserve commenced its two-day policy meeting. You already know the results of this, right? The bottom line is the Fed, no matter how you cut it, is going to raise interest rates again. Now, they raised them 75 points. Why did they do that? I mean, that's almost a full percentage point, which is crazy, because what this is going to do is it is going to tighten the grip around the throat of the housing market and of the retail car business. And I've told you a bunch of times about what's going on in these industries, right? Only 37% of Americans can walk onto a car lot and buy a car. The other 63% have to go to a buy here, pay here lot. Why? Because they've had hiccups. They've had mistakes. They have a poor slave score. They haven't stayed on the job long enough, and they can't afford a $650 a month car payment with a couple $100 a month in insurance on top of that. You're talking $1,000 a month to own a new car. Nobody wants to do that. Nobody can do that. So they're buying used. They're buying used. And you can only go so far. You can't go more than about 2 or 3 years. If you go 3 years, guess what you don't get? Financing. When you buy a new car, you can finance it for 7 years. A lot can happen in your life in 7 years, Earth Explorers. Let me tell you, a lot can happen in 7 years. You buy a used car, you think, okay, well, 7 years, that's enough time to pay off a $9,000 car or a $12,000 car, but you don't get 7 years. You only get 3 years. And if you get to the 5 and 6 year old vehicles, you're at 2 years. You don't save on the payment. You only save on the term of the loan. And that's why people are just continuing to drive their old cars and continuing to fix them up. That's why AutoZone and O'Reilly's and all these little job shops, that's why they're doing record businesses, because people have to fix their cars instead of trading it in and buying a new one. And these interest rates are going to dry that market up. And I saw the evidence of this today. I drove by the Toyota dealership on my way to or from work. I think it was to work. And the last 6 months I've driven by this dealership. It's a big Toyota dealership. But one of the things I noticed over the last 6 months is they have a lot of vacant spaces. Not a whole lot of cars in the lot. Now that either tells me, hey, sales are really good and people are buying them up, or you're having the same trouble everyone else is and you can't get the damn chips to get your cars on the lot. Well, today I drove by and there wasn't an empty spot on that lot. It was loaded with new cars. All those cars that have been languishing for 6 months in some part of the supply chain were delivered. And now you know what's going to happen? Yep. That car dealership and all the other car dealerships in the country, they're going to hold back on their orders from the factory. And when the car plants start laying off, first the off shifts with the people with less work time, less seniority, and then on up into the day shifts. When the car plants start laying off, then comes poverty and devastation. 3.6% unemployment. Who the hell do you think you're trying to kid here? We're at least 12% unemployment. And I would say if you were to do a survey of 10,000 random people that are working in, let's say, 20 states, and pick any 20 states you want. I don't have time to do this myself, but this is my guess. I would say 1 in 5 are not working in the job that they were trained to do. 1 in 5. 1 in 5 is either underemployed because they can't get the job that they had before, or they're unemployed and they're working a gig. They're working some kind of temp work. That's 20%. 20%. And that's what's affecting our economy. All right, you heard about border crossers crossing with fentanyl. We covered that last Sunday. We talked about weapons of mass destruction coming across the border. They caught a pickup truck with enough fentanyl to kill 51 million people. That's virtually everybody living on the West Coast. All of them. One truck. And they didn't catch all the trucks. It's worse. As Russia, China, and other nations hostile to the U.S. boost their presence within South America, should it come to a surprise to you to find uranium being trafficked by South American drug runners? Yeah. Well, the current rulers of Venezuela exhibit openly close and strong ties with countries like Iran and China, the CCP. It is not just a question of if they will build warheads with nuclear capabilities. It's a question of when, and they may already have them. And maybe not hydrogen weapons, but certainly atomic bombs. Now, anyone believing that they will not dare to use these bombs, I think you're just fooling yourself. We did. And we were filled with just as much hate and rage as they are. The way a theocracy thinks It's a whole lot different than our mindset. We think in terms of, well, if we blow them up, they'll blow us up. If they blow us up, we'll blow them up. And so, therefore, nobody blows anybody up because we all care about our cities, full of people. That's not the way a theocracy thinks. A theocracy doesn't fear death. They welcome death. They want to be at ground zero with the lawn chair and sunglasses because they're going straight to heaven with their virgins if they die in battle with glory. Yeah, they don't think the way we think. So when you put a nuclear weapon in their hands, it's a recipe for disaster. So Venezuela is showing a growing hostile attitude toward the USA and the West. Not the people. No, not the people. The people are wonderful. I know lots of Venezuelans. I've met them at MAGA conferences, actually. Quite impressed with how intelligent they are, how loyal they are to their country, but they're very afraid of their government. Back then, of course, the Venezuelan administrators did not support just Iran. They were already starting to improve ties with different flavors of Colombian guerrillas as well. It seems that no matter what that group is, if they defy the U.S. and the West, then they get a seat at the table, the Venezuelans. The city of Venezuela, the citizens of Venezuela know their country could become a warfare launching pad because they're pretty close to us. Fast missiles could make it here pretty quickly. But there's not much really they can do about it. They're under an iron grip, and they're being stomped on with increasing violence as time goes on. Even though the mainstream media doesn't show it, this is the reality here. So, no, it's not just a rumor. No. This is an illegal activity and a threat to world stability. Everywhere. Everywhere. The coincidence of rogue Iranians shutting down the cameras inside their enrichment plant, according to the compulsory IAEA agreements with the recent trafficking events, seems to remain ignored by the media. Who receives the benefits? Well, if a plant is used to produce radioactive materials for civilian use, why shut down the cameras in the first place? Right? No reason to do that. Keep watching. Iran, China, Russia, they seem to believe that this country will be easy to occupy and become a stronghold to threaten the U.S. domain over the Caribbean Sea and Central America, including Panama. It seems a lot of expats down in Colombia are in big trouble, getting out as quick as they can because Colombia is lost. Under the control of the former guerrilla member, G. Petro, the shady result of this election is nothing positive for the future of the Americas. And all those expats that are cashing their Social Security checks and living the life in Colombia, they're out. They're heading for Ecuador, which, by the way, Ecuador has got its problems too. They're heading for Portugal. They're heading for Panama, and Panama's got its problems too. And guess what? They're heading back, oh my God, into the United States. And a lot of people in California are heading to Mexico. But by the way, Bolivia, remember good old Bolivia? Bolivia made a major turnaround, right? Air cleaned up, streets cleaned up, human trafficking cleaned up. Guess what? They've been on the Iranian radar for a long time, since 2006. And Bolivia's strongman, Evo Morales, is another hardcore communist line in the region and holds a strong hate speech line against Yankee imperialism. And Bolivia is rich in uranium and also lithium, both considered strategic materials. There are basically about 6 main areas where uranium is located there. While not all these reservoirs are easily accessible, those easier to exploit are in the region of Táchira, a frontier area under the control of the Socialist Party and the Cojedes. The other regions need access by air. You no roads there, so you need helicopters to get in. Interestingly, the last studies of the radioactive levels of the mine started in 2019, but since 1998, not even one official position for the exploitation and peaceful use of this material went. Not one. The concerning part is, and this is where we really need to make sure you have your thermonuclear protection, iodine, sunglasses, etc., is that there is no possible way to know how much uranium is being extracted. Don't know. It could be a lot. It's worth a lot. It's being traded, and we don't know where it's going, and we don't know where it's gone. The concerning part is really scary because there are people in the world that are making good money because oil is very high right now, and that makes Iran and countries like Iran flush with cash. And when they get flush with cash, they'll pay for whatever they want. And what they want right now is uranium. Even common criminals here have been detained for uranium trafficking. It's all you have to do is shield it and pack it away nicely, and it doesn't put off an odor so dogs can't catch it, but we do have detectors at the border. But you got to understand, these people are desperate for one thing and one thing only, and that's money. And they don't have any special training. They don't have any special gear. They're messing with the most poisonous compounds the world has ever known. They possess drugs for dealing, and uranium was just the icing on the cake for them. The question is, how many people are trafficking these materials? There's no way of knowing, because we catch some, but we also know that they notoriously let some get caught while other shipments get through. You never think about it. You never think about uranium trafficking. Regarding the alliances with troublesome friends, the ties with these rogue states interested in the forbidden materials are not new. The Ahmadinejad speech, remember that? The former president of Iran, 2012, he literally said, "Our weapons are human values," is enough to raise even deeper concerns. They forged scientific and technological alliances, but none of this money or agreements seems to have worked to improve the quality of life or the general welfare of the Venezuelan people. You know, one of the things that you heard about in the news is that Russia was interested in buying drones from Iran. Did you see a picture of the drones? It looks an awful lot like the drone that Barack Obama flew to Iran, let Iran take it over, and land it intact. The RQ-170, you remember that? Yeah, it kind of looks like a UFO flying wing kind of thing, like a miniature a B-2 bomber. Yeah. Barack Obama gave it to him. They reverse engineered it. They've been making them ever since, and now Russia's interested in Russia's interested in buying them. Yeah, they can deliver weapons. Absolutely, they can deliver nuclear weapons. Let's see here. Not enough doom and gloom on nuclear stuff. Penguins. You know where penguins are, right? No, not the Arctic. They only exist in the Antarctic. Penguins are no strangers to climate change, it turns out. Their life history has been shaped by rising and falling temperatures, and their bodies are highly specialized for some of Earth's most extreme conditions. And yet, scientists are concerned the evolutionary path of the penguin may be grinding to a halt, thanks to what appears to be the lowest evolutionary rates ever detected in birds. A team of international researchers has just published one of the most comprehensive studies of penguin evolution to date, which is the first to integrate data from living and fossil penguin species. The research unveils the tumultuous life history of penguins in general, with 3/4 of all known penguin species now represented by fossils only, and they're already extinct. Over 60 million years, these iconic birds have evolved to become highly specialized marine predators and are now well adapted to some of the most extreme environments on the Earth. And yet, as their evolutionary history reveals, they now stand as sentinels, highlighting the vulnerability of cold-adapted fauna in a rapidly warming world. I can already tell you who's written this study. On land, the penguins can appear a bit ridiculous with their awkward waddle and seemingly useless wings. But underwater, their bodies are transformed into hydrodynamic torpedoes that would make any fleeing fish wish it could fly. Penguins had already lost their ability to fly 60 million years ago before the formation of the polar ice sheets in favor of wing-propelled diving. The fossils and genomic data suggest the unique features that enable penguins' aquatic lifestyles. They emerged early in their existence as a group, with rates of evolutionary change generally trending downward over time. Scientists think penguins originated as on a Gondwana land, which is basically one big body of land, which has kind of been shot down. The paper suggests the ancestors of modern penguins, crown penguins, emerged approximately 14 million years ago, a whole 10 million years after genetic analysis have hinted at. The particular period which would coincide with a moment of global cooling, named the Middle Miocene climate transition. Living penguins, however, split into separate genetic groups within the last 3 million years. As a result, the DNA pool of each group became very small, pushing species further apart genetically. In the period of warming that followed, they moved back toward the poles, and some groups, now much more genetically distinct, they crossed paths once more. The way certain groups of penguins experience these significant climate events offers insight into how they might cope with human-caused climate change. That's enough of that article, because there ain't no such thing. All right, one last thing I want to talk about is silver. I was going to bring some silver down and kind of tempt you a little bit, show you what a 10-ounce bar looks like. The United States entered a recession in 1990, officially. Actually, it was before that. I think in the mid-'80s we were already in it. But it lasted 8 months through March of 1991. Again, this was official, but I'm telling you, I lived during those days. It was rough days. The end of that recession marked the peak of the gold-silver ratio as we await tomorrow's Q2 GDP print to confirm a technical recession. We're in it, I'm telling you. Anyway, the gold-silver ratio is back up to those levels. And let's see here what they're talking about. Historically, silver is extremely underpriced compared to gold. And at some point, you should expect that gap to close. In the summer of 2019, this is right before the Roaring '20s, we were really gearing up to do some shit. Everything was getting ready to blow wide open, and everybody could feel it in the whole world. The only way that the deep state could beat Donald Trump at that point was to beat the Trump economy, and the only way to do that was with a bioweapon. But be that as it may, the silver-gold ratio climbed to nearly 93-1. And at the onset of the pandemic, it rocketed to over 100-1. But as the Fed slashed the rates and launched its massive quantitative easing program, which is basically just money printing, dumping $85 billion a day into the bond market, gold rallied, and it took silver with it, sort of. Silver typically outperforms gold during a gold bull run, and this was the case during the pandemic as gold pushed over $2,000 an ounce, and silver rallied to nearly $30 an ounce but that was a 147% increase. Meanwhile, the silver-gold ratio fell from over 100 to 1 to just over 64 to 1, close to the high end of the historical norm. With that spread widening again, we could be setting up for another big rally in silver. Now, the reason I bring this up is because silver spot price is down in the $18 and some change range. It doesn't mean you could buy it for that. You could probably buy it for about 18 plus 4, so somewhere around $22 an ounce. But if you got spare cash laying around, between the forces of the central bank digital currency and the forces of international counterfeiting and the forces that have been aligned against the use of cash for anything, I would recommend taking 25% of your residual cash and putting it into hard metal silver. And what I mean by that is not bullion. Don't buy the paper. Get the bar in your hands. Now, that being said, be wise. When you go to eBay and you look at the various silver stores that are there, and there's Johnson Matthey, and there's Silvertown, and there's Liberty, and you'll see the names. Look for the ones with free shipping and look for the ones with 4 to 5 days shipping. Okay? Don't get the ones that are 5 or 6 weeks, because what they're doing is speculating with your money. If you send money to them and they're saying, 30 days to deliver the silver, it means they don't have it. They don't have it. What they're going to do is take your money at today's price, and then they're going to shop for it at a lower price and try to make money on it. Don't be part of that. You're going to lose your money, or you may not have control of your money for quite some time if they try to return it. So mining.com is an interesting website. You should go to it sometime in your lifetime and just look and see what's going on. The ratio between gold and silver played an important role in ensuring coins had their appropriate value, and it remains an important technical metric for metals investors today. So the graphic charts 200 years of the gold to silver ratio. It plots the pivotal historical events that have shaped the peaks and valleys. You can see it clearly on the site. But what gold is primarily viewed as an inflation and recession hedge. So if they officially announce that we're in a recession tomorrow, silver is probably your best bet unless you have a lot of money laying around, because gold is quite expensive right now. But silver is also an industrial metal. It means it's used in the use of batteries and solar panels and all kinds of microcircuits. The ratio between gold and silver can reveal whether industrial metals demand is on the rise or if an economic slowdown or recession may be looming. The earliest recorded instance of the gold to silver ratio dates back to 3200 BC, when Menes, the first king of ancient Egypt, set a ratio of 2.5 to 1. Since then, the ratio has only seen gold's value rise as empires and governments became more familiar with the scarcity and difficulty of production of the two metals. Ancient Rome, and we're talking about before Romulus and Remus, ancient Rome, was one of the earliest ancient civilizations to set a gold to silver ratio, starting as low as 8 to 1 in 210 BC. Over the decades, varying gold and silver inflows from Rome's conquest caused the ratio to fluctuate between 8 to 12 ounces of silver for every ounce of gold. By 46 BC, Julius Caesar had established a standard gold to silver ratio of 11.5 to 1, and then it went to 11.75 to 1. By the 18th century, the gold to silver ratio was being redefined by the U.S. government Coinage Act of 1792, which set the ratio at 15 to 1. This act was the basis for U.S. coins. Now, around the same time, France had enacted a ratio of 15.5 to 1, so everybody was pretty stable. By the 20th century, the ratio had already reached heights of around 40 to 1. With the start of World War II, it further pushed the ratio to a high of nearly 100 to 1. In 2020, the ratio set new highs of more than 123 to 1 as pandemic fears saw investors pile into gold as a safe haven asset, while the gold to silver ratio then tumbled to around 65 to 1 in the first quarter of 2021. Runaway inflation and a potential recession has put gold in the spotlight again. So the big question is whether the Fed is going to keep tightening even as it becomes more apparent we're in a recession. Historically, Fed has been quick to rush in and prop up a lagging economy. Rate cuts and a return to quantitative easing would almost certainly pour more gasoline on the inflation fire. I don't think they're going to be doing that anytime soon, but the dollar is very strong right now, and that means that foreign money is very difficult to spend in the U.S. U.S. money is very easy to spend in foreign markets. That's exactly what you're going to start happening. Look, this is a very difficult thing to get a handle on, and if you don't have enough money to make your bills, you're not worried about it anyway. But if you do have enough money to make your bills and you have some money put back, you don't want to see it evaporate. You don't want to see, and we were talking about this the other day with the CBDC, the central bank digital currency, coming in and saying, hey, cash is the currency of crime. Let's give everybody a one-for-one swap for people that have money in the bank. But all these people, 25, 30% of the country, the residents of the country, illegal tourists, etc., who don't have bank accounts, they're just SOL. You can't take the money back to the bank because you don't have an ID at the bank. You don't have an account at the bank. And you know what that's going to do, especially if you're able to turn that cash into an asset. Land, liquor, guns, gold, silver. If you're able to turn that into an asset, you know what's going to happen. If they go to a central bank digital currency, it is going to open a black market like you've never seen before. People will still do commerce with one another, and they won't use the central bank digital currency. They're going to resist. You're going to resist, aren't you? Yes, you are. You're a good, loyal listener to the program, and I really, really appreciate you being here tonight. We are here every Wednesday, every Sunday at 8 p.m. My name is Brooks Agnew. I'm your host with the America Free Radio Network and the X Squared Radio program. Tonight we're coming to you on Revolution Radio, our good friends out on the West Coast. And we're also streaming to you live on several different platforms. Video. We grow because you share us with your friends. So please do that. And don't forget, if you've listened to this program all night and you've seen the ads, don't forget to get your ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine in your arsenal. If you have it, fine. Get your friends to get it because it's coming. Fall is coming and the election is coming, and they're going to use the weapon again. And by the way, if you've already been jabbed, it's good to get those spike proteins out of your body. We'll see you on Sunday night at 8 p.m. right here on America Free Radio. Peace, Earth Explorers.
Listening to Revolution